Cool. So yeah. So as I was talking earlier, we do have an opportunity to really help bridge the STEM skills gap, and that is what we are trying to do by offering these skills-focused sessions, which is pretty much hands-on, project-based, that will really help students to understand the technologies, practice with it, and then empower themselves to be able to grow. This is a pilot class where we're just showing you an intro into one of the skills. Steve is my mentor, one of my mentors, and he is going to show you all on how to use a certain software, very important software program, and do some data manipulation and some graphics, with it, right? And as a prep for this, we have asked you to also get your computer set up with some software, and we'd love to see you participate on this pilot as well. Even though it's a pilot, we want active participation. We'd like to see you really be involved and engaged, because that's how we learn. You learn by practice. And the more you practice, the more you learn. Even if it's a pilot class, we think there's an opportunity for us to practice a little bit. So we get into the swing of things, and then we're able to apply it. Okay, so without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite my mentor, Steve, to kindly share what he had planned for this session, and then walk you through it in terms of just the technical or what you call housekeeping items. If anyone has a question, just raise your hand, or you could click the reactions sign and just raise your hand over there as well. And Steve will try to be spontaneous and answer it. Otherwise, I'll also answer it. And if both of us are stumped, then we'll get back to you and make sure you get the answer. Okay, and this is possible. We don't have all the answers. I must acknowledge that, but we'll do our best. We'll do our best to make sure that your responded. Your question is responded. That's just housekeeping rules. Otherwise, if you have any, I think So yes, over to you, Steve. Why don't you take it away? Okay.
Thank you, Anthony. Well, first off, nice to meet everyone. I'm really excited to, be here with all of you. So as Anthony kind of hinted at, today we'll be talking about a few softwares that, we believe that are in demand nowadays and has been kind of requested in industry all over, regardless if you're in tech, healthcare, sales, business, whatever you can think of. Some of the skills we hope we talk about today can very well transfer over to anything that you might be interested in. So it's not just completely focused on engineering and computer science. So just allow me to share my screen. Let's see what we have here. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So today we'll be talking about the Pandas library used through Python. Oh, I'm sorry, did someone have a question?
I said that I saw the screen.
Okay, awesome. But yeah, so we'll be talking about the Pandas library, which again is heavily focused on Python programming. Has anyone here heard of either of those words before, Python or Pandas? Not the animal? No? No worries. So again, we'll try to go over any of the details today. And again, if there's any questions, like Anthony said, feel free to just unmute, just let me know or raise your hand. But yeah, without further ado, let's move on. Yeah, so in regards to Python, Python is often known for being one of the easiest programming languages, actually. It's pretty simple when it comes to its syntax. It's pretty straightforward, readable. And I think that it's actually one of the most accessible when it comes to beginners. Being that it's pretty simple, you can focus on actually solving the problem instead of getting all tangled up and worried about how it's structured. So it's pretty smooth in that way. In addition, it's actually pretty versatile, meaning that it's actually used in a wide range of applications, whether you're interested in web development, data analysis, AI, automation, you name it, it's very much involved in that as well. And regardless if you're interested in building websites or analyzing data or creating chatbots like ChatGPT, Python is actually very useful in any of those fields as well. So another advantage of using Python is this wide range of job opportunities it also offers. It's very high demand across industries, like I said, whether you're in tech, finance, healthcare, and more. Several companies actually seek Python developers exclusively because of how versatile, how flexible they are, and because of its extensive libraries such as Pandas that can kind of like open up several career opportunities for you. So again, not only does Python actually provide a number of jobs, it also actually provides competitive salaries when you go into the workforce. So Python developers enjoy, attractive compensation packages due to the demand in their skills. Python can actually pave a way like a financially rewarding career. Lastly, like I just kind of hinted before, ChatGPT. It's been all over the news. It's actually a pretty useful tool, regardless, again, wherever you are in life. It's actually a pretty neat tool that you have at your disposal. It's pretty much like what OpenAI has, kind of like a language model on their backend, and ChatGPT kind of like simplifies that, basically asking like any questions that you might have, and kind of like spitting out any useful answer that you can possibly use on your side. It can assist whether you're a developer or whether you're learning like yourselves. It can offer guidance, answering questions, and even help with like challenging coding questions. So that's kind of like my personal opinion on why you should learn Python. But I'm sure if you like do your own personal research, there's a number of other reasons why you should actually explore this field. So let's talk about Pandas, the exclusive library that we will be talking about for today. So again, like I said, I hope I don't want to like confuse you guys with the Pandas library and the animal. There is actually inspiration behind that. If I'm being honest, I actually don't know the exact reasoning why we call this data manipulation library Pandas, but I'm pretty sure the animal is obviously an inspiration for it. So just a little bit about the library. It's actually an exclusive data manipulation library only available on Python, making it a very valuable tool, whether you're a beginner in data analysis or even an expert like Anthony, for example. He's been using this for years. So in regards to data representation, Pandas provides an intuitive and powerful way to represent and manipulate structured data. When we talk about structured data, we're talking about a data frame, such as like a spreadsheet or kind of like a table. This makes it easier for us to understand and work with the data that we'll be talking about today as well. In regards to its extensive features, it actually offers a wide range of functionalities for data manipulation, analysis, exploration. It provides methods for data cleaning, filtering, sorting, grouping, and all that good stuff. Basically, just empowers beginners and advanced people who are more experienced in this field to kind of like perform with complex data more efficiently. When it comes to handling this data, it actually allows us to integrate Pandas to handle larger data sets like thousands, millions of rows, and basically just handle them with like speed and efficiency. Beginners can work with data sets of various sizes and perform operations quickly, enhancing their productivity basically. When it comes,
real quick. Yep. So Aeneas and Cassidy, are you comfortable? So far, so good. Are you tracking?
Yes.
Okay, good. Cassidy, you're good? Okay, awesome. Yep, I'm just making sure that we're not going too
of course, yeah.
It's a pace.
Absolutely.
Yep. Wonderful.
Yeah. So, like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to stop me. I understand that some of this might seem intimidating, but again, we'll be going into examples shortly. I promise you, coding is nothing more than asking the right questions and Googling the right questions too. And hopefully, again, that's something we can kind of like talk about more here today. But just again, a few things regarding Pandas, just a few more standard stuff to go over. It like when it comes to like customizing the data, again, and data in this case is just anything on like a spreadsheet, an Excel, Google Spreadsheets. It allows us to customize and transform data easily. It does enable us to add or remove columns, apply functions to specific columns, and basically just create new variables and derive insights from that data, seeing what we can get from the information that we have available. And again, like asking the right questions, maybe we can kind of like see what we can like get out of it. So this flexibility helps us tailor the data according to the analysis requirements, basically. And finally, when it comes to Pandas, it actually means less coding. As funny as that does sound, compared to traditional approaches, Pandas actually does simplify data manipulation and analysis, and with expressive and concise syntax. Beginners can achieve complex operations with minimal lines of code, enabling faster development for us. So the bottom line is when it comes to learning Pandas, it's actually essential when it comes to beginners and when learning to Python. Powerful data representation, extensive features are basically kind of like the milestones when it comes to pandas. So again, like whenever you think of data science, when it comes to analysis, Panda is pretty much going to be your best friend for the most part. So next slide. So we're going to start off with the first step, and that's basically importing the data as well as reading the data on a data frame. Again, just a fancy word for basically the spreadsheet. So before we move forward, though, I just want to make sure, did everyone complete the survey in the email?
No, not yet.
No worries. So yeah, we can actually take just a minute or two just to fill it out. And again, I promise there's a reason why we're doing this. So let's see if I can send it through here.
Yeah,
Let me know if you can access that.
perfect, perfect. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to try to access it right now. And if you've not filled it, please go ahead and fill it up. All of us who are here on the call, I think that will be a nice team exercise. Okay, so Steve, I'm also going to fill one.
Sure.
Favorite ice cream flavor, strawberry, extinct animal pet. Whoa. Yeah, you should see some responses coming your way. Oh, yep, we'll work with what we have. Can we turn on multiple responses if we get some more data points? Let's say, okay, I'm going to try user two. I have one with my real name, one with the user two, just to get some more data. Okay. So you should have some more records coming in there.
Mhm.
Cool. Jennifer, you're
So
participating, right?
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm doing it now. Yes,
Cool. Yep.
I'm almost done.
and again, as silly as the questions are, this is actually a pretty standard way of, kind of like marketing people when it comes to like submitting surveys. They actually gather that information and kind of like make an interpretation from it. And these are some of the questions that, again, like you can kind of like figure out, like, the likes and dislikes of people. So we'll definitely get into it in a moment. But yeah, whenever you're done, just let me know. All right, we have a few completed. Awesome. All right, so I'll just go ahead and start sharing my screen once more just to see, just to show you guys like what I'm seeing on my side. So let's see here, share screen. All right, do you guys see my screen?
Super.
Awesome. So this is the information that I see on my side. Basically, every time you fill out the survey, someone on the main side, the primary user, has a spreadsheet connected to the Google form. So the Google Sheet here is every submission that you guys are putting in, and each row is an entry. It's a submission. So for example, on my side, on a primary side, Google Form actually shows me all the graphs on like, who's answering what. And basically what I want to do today is kind of like show you the back. How does Google exactly give you this information? Why exactly are we kind of like sorting the values the way it is and kind of like portraying it a certain way as well? And there are a number of ways you can do this, whether it's kind of like a pie chart, a line graph, scatter plot, all that stuff. I'm going to show you guys kind of like what they do on the back end and giving you this information. So again, this is just something that a lot of people use when looking at the analytics, but I'm going to show you how exactly to code this stuff and how it kind of like is powered up on the backside. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to download this spreadsheet. I'm going to download this file so we can read it in our code here. And I'll go into detail what each line says. But for now, I'm just going to basically just download it onto my computer and we're going to submit it onto Jupyter Notebook. And again, like based on the email that I sent out, this is recorded, so you will be able to go back and kind of like follow along. But in the meantime, I would just advise you open Jupyter Notebook if you haven't already and follow along in regards to submitting the Jupyter Notebook file, or in this case, the CSV file, which we'll talk about more. So let me just...
So this is Cassidy's mom.
Mhm.
Her computer went dead and we're just getting back on. So how do we get that Jupyter Notebook?
Right. So in the email that I sent a few days ago, there's a link called Anaconda. That's basically where you will find all the applications when it comes to like data science, data analysis. You pretty much just have to install Anaconda. Through
So I
Anaconda,
installed the Anaconda, the Python, and then it was some other notebooks that I installed as well.
right.
So I need those 3
Mhm.
links, but how do I get what you, or are we not supposed to have what you had on your screen?
Oh, so the code itself, no, but like the software.
Okay.
Here I can share my screen for that as well. Let's see here. Share screen.
Yeah, so the coding is a little ahead. So yeah, so you'll definitely see the integrated development environment for Anaconda. Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't know if we missed something, a vital part while the laptop was down. Okay.
Let's see. So do you guys see the Anaconda Navigator?
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. So from here, you can actually install Jupyter Notebook. So I already have it installed. So from my side, it says launch. I don't know if it says launch on your side. But yeah, no, again, like this is being recorded, so if you have to go back, feel free to circle back here. But this is pretty much all I'm doing. I'm going to the Anaconda Navigator and clicking on Jupyter Notebook and just launching that platform. Sorry, just let me share the screen once more. So yeah, once you launch Jupyter Notebook, this should be a similar platform you should be looking at. This is kind of like the interface of Jupyter Notebook. And you wouldn't have like the files here, but like it'll be structured the same way. And again, all of this will be submitted on the Google Classroom. So again, you have access to all the information we'll be talking about today.
Cool.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, so the first step is there's some setup involved in getting the notebook set up. Once you're set up, then you can just walk through the code step by step. Is that what you're saying, Steve?
Yes,
Yep. Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. And this,
perfect.
oh, yep. Go ahead. Mhm.
Yeah. So for now, I'm just gonna download it.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm not sure. Let's see.
Yep. Very good.
So yeah, so on Jupyter, no, I'm sorry, not on Jupyter Notebook, on Google Sheets, on this platform here, we're just going to go onto File, Download, and we're going to download as a CSV, which we'll talk about soon. But all you need to know, this is pretty much like the standard when it comes to data analysis, data science. You want to download the information as a CSV file simply because of its efficiency, how quickly you can kind of like get the information through there. But we're just going to stick with CSV for today. So once I download it, as you see over here, I'm going to go over to my Jupyter Notebook platform right here, and I'm going to click on Upload. So once I click Upload, I'm going to get the most recent file that I just downloaded. So once I do that, click Open, the blue Upload, And from there, it's officially on my Jupyter Notebook platform. On this interface here, I now have access to that data frame, or again, just a fancy word for a spreadsheet. So just for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to simplify the name just because I wouldn't have to be copy and pasting this very long name. So I'm just going to click on this checkbox here, and I'm going to click on rename. So instead of this big long name, I'm just going to call it form response 1. So I'm just going to rename it like this. Let me actually just copy this.
And you'll call it .csv, or don't need to do that?
I believe when it comes to Jupyter Notebook, actually, it recognizes this as CSV automatically. So yeah, that's actually a good point. There are plenty other data analysis tools out there, but for Jupyter Notebook, there are just a few magic tricks that you can use in this case, which luckily for this instance, we don't have to put .csv as the extension, because Jupyter Notebook luckily recognizes this as a CSV file, or if it was a TSV file, another complex format, it recognizes whatever you're inputting. But in this case, it does know that it's a CSV file. Once we go back to our code here, again, I'll upload this on the classroom just so you have access to it, or you're free to follow along as well. We're going to import the pandas library, and we're going to call it as PD. This is, again, kind of like standard in industry when it comes to engineering, computer science. You can pretty much call it whatever you want, but in most cases, people call it PD, short for pandas. So I'm going to shift enter. Oh, sorry. And we basically have the library installed on this notebook. We call this platform a notebook. I accidentally clicked enter for this code, but we're not using this one. So I'm going to use the notebook that we just downloaded. This is the old notebook that we had. So I'm going to click form response 1, and I'm going to call it DF. And that is, of course, short for data frame. And we're basically setting that equal to PD, we're calling pandas, and we're going to summon the module that we wanted. In this case, read_CSV. We're basically reading the CSV that we just downloaded. Once I click enter, we have the information on our interface. So let me actually go back to the PowerPoint, sorry, right here. So just to go back to the pictures that I posted here, hopefully this can kind of elaborate further. All we're doing is importing the library, the pandas library, and from there, we're just going to use the modules to read our data. All we're doing to import the library is import pandas as PD. The picture that I have here is a CSV file, which is, again, we wouldn't have to go into much detail, but again, it's just a more, it's pretty much similar to an Excel file that I'm sure some of you are familiar with. But again, instead of kind of like the cells being separated by kind of like the table format, it's going to be separated by with a comma. So again, this is just merely for kind of like more efficient reading of the information. So that's pretty much all we're doing here, just importing the data as a CSV, and we're using pandas to just go through all the information together.
So Stephen,
So
in the real world, now this is a data set with about say 10, 12 records, right? So in the real world, so let's say you have some health related data that you're working in a hospital, and you're trying to pull this up. So you can pull this in the same technique, similar?
yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Or if you're say driving a car and there's this, all kinds of what do you call autonomous driving and so on that's happening, all these sensors are giving this information, and you can take this data to manipulate within the program using this technique. That's what I mean. That's huge. That is huge. Yep, terrific.
Absolutely. And let me just bring this screen back. So let's see. Screen. Yeah, so back to Jupyter Notebook here. This is how it's reading the CSV file that we import, or we basically just downloaded onto the interface. It's pretty much structured the same way as we saw before here, basically as a table. But again, like if you were to look on it on any other app, like say a Notepad on a PC, it'll read it completely different as shown before over here. It will basically just see the information divided by commas. So Jupyter Notebook separates the information as a table, and it shows you everyone who filled out the form, how they answered, whether they answered or not. And again, all the fun stuff that we can talk about more. It basically just shows right here when you basically just call on the data frame, in this case, DF. So I just want to make sure there's no confusion here. Any questions on kind of like the first two lines here? We're all good? Perfect. Let me bring back the PowerPoint here. So the second step that I kind of want to go into is kind of like the first module that I think is important when it comes to data sets. And that is .lock as well as .ilock. Now, when working with pandas, you will often come across two important indexing methods, both of these. These methods allow you to access and manipulate the data in a data frame. And it's whether it's label-based or integer-based. Now, can anyone remind me what an integer is? What's that a fancy word for?
A spreadsheet?
So we are reading a spreadsheet, but as an integer though, like what is another name for an integer?
Any number that's positive or negative or zero, right? So whole number.
Absolutely.
Actually, yeah.
Exactly. So so the only reason why I'm asking that is because that's kind of like the main difference between the two modules here. .lock as well as .ilock. The I in .ilock stands for integer. And I just want to make sure again, like there's no confusion there. That's just a fancy way for a number, whether that is 0 in the negatives or in the positives, it stands for integer. So what I kind of want to elaborate on is that when it comes to .lock, its indexer is often used to access data by its label. Again, another fancy word for its headers when it comes to like a data set. So we'll go back to the data set in a moment. But again, it's just kind of like the headers on the top. Like, what's your name? What's your favorite ice cream? What kind of like dinosaur do you want? Stuff like that. Those are kind of the labels that it'll take into consideration when it comes to refining the data. So when it comes to .ilock, I want to preface this by saying that as complex and as, you know, impressive the codes are, a little secret is that computers are really dumb. They start counting by zeros instead of using one. So when it comes to the data set that we had before, let me go back. So when it comes to the data here, the first row here is 0, not 1. The first column here is not 1, it's 0. All right, so again, that might sound a little complicated, might take some time to get used to, but all you need to know when it comes to computer science, when it comes to a data frame as well, you're always going to start counting with 0, never 1. So I just want to make that perfectly clear going forward. In this case, when I refer to the first row, I am literally meaning the first row, but if I'm saying row 0, I'm talking about row 1 as well. Totally two different things there, but again, we'll get used to that in a moment. So going to the examples here, the first example when it comes to .lock, I'm basically saying to print the data frame where the name is specifically my name, Stephen Smith. So once I click enter, it's going to give me all the information where the name is Stephen Smith. So all the information that I input when I filled in the survey, it's going to print right here with all the information available. And again, that doesn't just include myself, that includes Anthony, that includes Cassidy, Anais, anyone that I'm looking for here, and I'm looking for information on how you submitted that, you can absolutely look up the information. And the next example here, this is just a fancy way of saying, hey, I want to look for information on Anthony as well as the user Sebi. I'm looking for both of these people in my data set, and I want to see what they answered in regards to the name, timestamp, favorite ice cream, dinosaur, how they feel about computer science, all that stuff. I wanted to see the information for both of them. So I want to just preface this as well, or emphasize again, that all I'm doing is calling the data frame like we did before. This is the data frame, which is DF. And I'm saying locate the name where it's Anthony, and locate this thing here just means and as well, to locate the answers for Sebi. So once I click that, I see both of their answers. I see how Anthony answered, and I see how Sebi answered. I know their favorite ice cream flavor, and I know their favorite animal that they would choose. All this information is made available right here once you kind of like select both of those information. On the next column here, I want to show the whole entire column in regards to the favorite ice cream flavor. So again, all I'm doing is printing df.lock, and then I'm putting a colon, comma, the header name, favorite ice cream flavor. So the colon here, again, nothing complicated. It's just a fancy way of telling my code, hey, I want this entire column. So I'm going to print this entire column with the following. So I have all the flavors here, and I have all the information. Now, keep in mind that I'm excluding everything else. I don't have the name. I don't have the dinosaur information. I don't have the competency when it comes to computer science. All I have right now is just the ice cream flavor. Within the next example here, I am again calling the data frame using .lock. I'm looking for the row where the name is Chad Princeton, as well as the name Joseph Smith. And I want to know what's their favorite job or what job they want and how comfortable they are when it comes to computer programming. These are the only two things that I'm looking for. I don't care about anything else. I just want these two columns and how they answered. So once I click on that, I know that the first person, in this case, Chad, I know that he feels like he's a 3 when it comes to computer science. And I know that he wants to go into development. I know that in this case, Joseph, he also feels like a 3, but I also know that he also wants to go into development as well. So again, I just want to point this out that there's a number of examples that you can use for .lock, but the only main takeaway that I would recommend to get from this is that when it comes to .lock, I'm only taking into consideration the headers, the bolded letters up here. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? .lock?
And do we need to worry about the case, Stephen?
I'm sorry?
The case of the column. So let's say it is mixed case, timestamp. We have the capital T. Do we need to be precise on the scale? On the
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Anthony. And that's another thing I would recommend when it comes to Python or coding in general, whether you're learning Python or any other language, capitalization does matter. Whether it's lowercase, uppercase, you need to be exactly precise, as Anthony said, when it comes to kind of like importing that data or even just typing that data when looking for the information. So for example, just for this example here, if I didn't use a capitalized N and put lowercase, I get this ugly looking error here. And all of this is just basically saying, hey, you didn't exactly type in the column name correctly. All I have to do in this case is just change it, and I'm back to where I was before. So yes, capitalization, punctuality does matter when it comes to coding. But yeah, excellent question. So the next thing that I want to go over is .ilock. Now, again, it might look a little complicated, but I promise it's literally the same idea. But instead of taking the headers into consideration, we are now taking the row and column number instead. Now, remember what I said before. We never start with 1, we start with 0. So in the following examples, I kind of want to like walk you through it. So when it comes to printing df.ilock, and in the brackets, I'm putting 2. Now I want to ask you guys, when I mean 2, what number am I really thinking about? Now, let me just elaborate a little more. Not 0. I'll give you a hint. We're subtracting 1.
One, one,
Exactly, 1. So in this case, I am looking for the how do I say this? From our side, the second row. We're looking at the second row. All right, so if I go back here, we start with 0, 1, 2. All right, so let's just see how this prints out. So in this case, row 2 on the computer side, how they're reading it, we're reading Edward Brown, he feels like a 2 when it comes to computer programming. His favorite ice cream is cookies and cream. He would want a T-Rex. He wants to go into marketing. He likes chicken and broccoli. And this is all the information that we had on the data frame. On the spreadsheet, this is everything how he responded. So if we go back, we read it ourselves. In this case, Edward Brown is 0, 1, 2. All right. Any questions on how he read the first example there? All right. So again, I just want to make sure I understand that it's like actually an understandable mistake. If you were counting it manually, you would assume that it was Anthony who was number 2. But because again, we're starting with 0, it would be Edward. So I just want to make that perfectly clear for everyone in case you have any questions. But we're subtracting 1 in this case. The next example, we are selecting multiple rows in this case. So we are selecting row 0 and row 3. So if we go back, we're selecting mine as well as 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna go out a limb here and say we're looking at Chad as well. So let's just see if I'm correct on this. Or does anyone agree or disagree if we're looking for row 0 and 3? All right, so let's see. All right, so we are looking at my responses as well as Chad's responses. Because we're selecting both of those rows, those are the only information that we have right now. We have my name, Chad's name, our competency level, our favorite ice cream, what dinosaur we want, what jobs we want, and basically a fun fact about us. So all we're doing here is selecting those 2 rows, and it's basically printing all the information that we have available in there. Any questions there? All right, so in the next example, I'm saying print the data frame using .iloc, and I have a colon, comma 1. Now in this case, I'm selecting a single column. I'm removing everything else. I'm looking for 1 column. Does anyone want to take a guess as to which column that is? From your point of view, not the computer's view. If I'm looking for column 1 from a computer's point of view, or
Everything.
how about this? I'm sorry.
Would it be 0?
Okay, so we got a 0. Anthony?
Yeah, you're saying everything in column 1? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. All right, so let's see. So if I submit this code, I'm pushing everything. I'm pushing a single column here, and I'm reading it, and it's printing out everything that's available on that column. So what I have here is the name column. So if we go back up, column, comma 1 is giving me, from our point of view, the second column, 1, 2. But how the computer views it, it's basically number 1, because it starts with 0,
0, 1, yep.
and the next one's 1. So if we have a colon, comma, a number, we can assume that we are selecting only a column. So going further in this slightly more complicated example, what I want to show is that you can select specific rows and columns using .iloc. So now we're selecting certain information that, again, when it comes to like marketing, computer science, in the tech, healthcare, when we're looking for a specific information, there's obviously more to kind of like extract besides a single column and a single row. There's several information that you can take away. And in this case might be useful to understand kind of like how you kind of like take away from certain cells. So in this case, I'm looking for row 0, column 2, and I'm looking for row 1, column 2. So once I submit that information, I'm only getting the name column, and in this case, it's my name as well as Edward. And I'm also going to the computer question, and I see that information that, you know, how comfortable we feel, and that's a 6 and a 2. So again, like I understand it might seem a little complicated, it seem weird to just kind of like start with 0. But again, from a computer's point of view, it's very important to understand that you're counting a certain way. And that in the future, if you decide to go into computer science, it's actually very important to understand that, you know, whether it's like a job or an internship, it's important to kind of like extract from certain information, not just a single row or a single column. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whether you think about it or not, you have to understand that from a coding point of view, it's just important to understand that you're starting with 0. That's kind of like the bottom line when it comes to .iloc. It's important to realize that. But again, any questions when it comes to .iloc, or kind of want to go over one of the examples here? Okay, no worries. So again,
Yeah, just a time check, but I think you're really doing good. You covered a lot of ground already. You want
of
to
course, yeah.
a little bit, this is, you know, a pilot session, so you want to summarize a little bit what we have learned so far? And, yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so again, like I just based on the few examples that I shared with you here, I understand that some of it might seem daunting. It seems a little scary, but I understand completely. I would just recommend, honestly, from when I originally started with STEM Success with Anthony here, I didn't feel confident as well. But again, I think that, you know, practicing over time is building that confidence, seeing the beauty behind kind of like, you know, stuff like Google, stuff like, you know, Instagram, Facebook. A lot of them are built on languages like Python. Anthony, if I can go over one thing in particular,
Sure,
I
sure,
just
sure.
want to
Yeah.
I just want to go over kind of like the final step here, and that is kind of like graphing all the information that we have. I just want to point out for everyone, only on Jupyter Notebook you can use this line here, and it's % matplotlib inline. This is only for Jupyter Notebook. When you put that, you immediately import matplotlib, which again sounds really weird, scary, but it's basically the library that in data science you use to graph your data, graph the information that you have. So I'm just going to click enter. And what I want to do here is I want to plot everyone's favorite ice cream. I want to see how you responded, whether there's some overlap, whether there's one person who feels a different way. I want to see that information on a more visual setting. So if I select on that, I produced a bar graph manually. And again, very similar to what we had here. Well, not exactly the same way, but again, a similar graph that shows how everyone responded. So just to read it for everyone, we see that chocolate is by far the most popular flavor. We see that 3 people accounted for that. We have 2 people for strawberry, 2 people for vanilla, 2 people for cookie dough, and 1 person for cookies and cream and 1 for banana. Everything you see here, again, is kind of like the back end that powers Google Form in this case. Again, not exactly identical, but that's kind of like a stepping stone as to how you would get a graph like that when it comes to coding. When it comes to, sorry, for the value counts portion, that's kind of like how we're getting like, you know, the number of people answering the similar way. Again, the 3 people counting for chocolate is exactly where value counts comes into play. We're counting how many people like chocolate. We're counting how many people like vanilla, strawberry, cookies and cream, banana. That's basically what the value counts function is made for. As well as for the next graph that I promise is the last one that I'll show, is the kind of dinosaur that you would want later if they ever decide to reanimate any of these. But yeah, all we're doing here is counting the number of responses. We're going to plot that information with a bar graph. And basically, fig size is using the width and the height. So we're saying we're going to do 15 width and 7 height. And in this case, this fancy number looking here is called a hex color. Now you can Google this, but in this case, it's just going to be green in this case. This is just a fancy way of saying green. So again, what we're doing here is just counting the dinosaur that people would want. In this case, for some reason, we have pterodactyl being the most popular choice for people, T-Rex being the second preferred choice, which is 3, and then both a mammoth and saber-toothed tiger, we see 2 people responding. So again, I understand that some of the code, some of the languages used here might seem a little weird, but I promise you it's all about practice. It's all about kind of like, you know, contributing to a larger project at play. I think that if you decide to go further, I think that it's actually very important to just decide what kind of like question you're trying to answer personally. Maybe that's not kind of like someone's favorite ice cream, maybe not the dinosaur that you might want. But again, it's just actually very worthwhile to kind of like figure out what you like and how you can answer that question and improve on it later on in life. If you decide to go further, I promise you can go into more complex stuff like this. I won't go into detail as to what this is, but all you pretty much can consider is pretty much kind of like, you know, maybe counting. If you decide to go into marketing, for example, and wanted to see how a person is responding, what's the most popular, what's not so popular, you can actually go into detail and counting the number of words in this case. So again, like you can see a lot of people use a lot of people use like, to, play, and so on. So again, like when it comes to kind of like answering a certain question, what do certain people like? You can definitely kind of like answer that question using Python. But again, the bottom line is that Python is actually a pretty impressive tool, regardless if you're going into marketing, regardless if you're going to computer science, engineering, or even in healthcare. I think that it's actually very worthwhile to research. And yeah, I'll leave it up to you, Anthony.
Awesome. Oh, thank you, Steve. Great job. Great job on really bringing it all together. During this session, we learned, in fact, before this session, we did some setup on our computers. We got the Anaconda IDE set up, and we also had the Juniper notebook set up. Then we were able to answer a survey, import a file based on that data that was generated from that survey. We were able to see the data metrics and it were introduced directly, by pretty much application. If you were hands-on on this, you'd be playing with these scripts into what is known as a data frame. And you got into the syntax or the grammar of the language, understanding the indexing and the locational indexing of the rows and the columns within this matrix, and certain symbols, like the colon, for example, reflects all, or the pipe symbol, which reflects and so on. And you were also introduced to a library called Matplotlib, which also shows some graphic capabilities within Python. A lot of things in these 40 minutes, right? So thank you, Steve, for sharing us with this. And we have got a recording that will capture it for those of you who want to play it. This is just a pilot class. This was just to give you a small intro into the possibility that this is one of the facets of STEM, right? So we invite you, speak to Jennifer if you're interested. If you know some friends of you who are interested, speak to Jennifer. We'll work together to get a whole series set up. And we will upgrade your skill, wherein you will be empowered to really help practice as well as experiment and try out these tools and skills so that you would be really able to participate in the marketplace. Okay, so on that note, I would like to conclude this pilot. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. This is a good time to ask. So Anais, Zach, Cassidy, what do you think about the session so far?
I think it's nice. I usually use, I think it's nice. I usually use Blockcode and Java, so this is way easier.
Very good.
I was going to say the same thing.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So, the more you learn, the more you try, the more you experiment, you get better at certain skills, and it's good for you, right? As you advance, you're able to really help clients. And as we had indicated in our intro, we just shared a small subset of data, right? If you have a huge health-related data, for example, millions of people, same principles we could use in order to navigate through that data set and then call out certain pieces of information. Same principles. If you have some climate-related data, same principles of getting it into a file, pulling up the data frame, navigating through the columns, and selecting and filtering it based on certain criteria you have. A really powerful introduction to powerful and graphing them so that you can really make that analysis, right? Oh, excellent. Excellent. Yeah. So I think we have got the tip of the iceberg, if you may. So I encourage you. I know if you're excited about it, if you're interested to further talk to Jennifer and her team. We will make sure that you have an opportunity to sign up for a series where we'll be taking you to not just one set of STEM skills, a lot more STEM skills. I know it is a journey. Yep. Go ahead, Zach.
What code was used today?
Which column was used today?
Mm-hmm.
Steve, you want to answer that question?
Yeah, so we use Python programming today. So again, there's several languages. If you're interested in computer science, there are several like, Java, C++. But if you're just starting with coding, I would very much recommend Python.
Okay, Zach, does that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Very good. Any other questions?
Thank you.
No? Okay. So on that note, I'd like to thank you all for your active involvement, your participation, and Steve, thank you. Great job on really taking us through a lot of content in such a short time. And Jennifer, thank you for allowing us a chance to share this, showcase this, and also make it available. The recording for this session will be available. We'll be sending you a link in a couple of days. And then you can share this, Jennifer, to your team, to your stakeholders. And if there's an interest, if there's some more interest, we will have a series towards this. Okay. Awesome. Great. Jennifer, you want to say something from your side?
No, thank you, guys. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Anthony. We really appreciate it. And I think, Anthony, we do have 2 more pilots scheduled for June and July. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. For those of you who missed the pilot, we wait for typically 10 students. So Jennifer does some exploration. And this time, because it was a long weekend, I think some of you could show up. But typically, we would like to have some more students involved so that we can really organize a good session, and then we can have that.
Okay,
So that's what we'd encourage. Okay.
thank you.
Awesome. Thank you once again. Enjoy. Have a wonderful holiday, Memorial long holiday weekend. And thank you once again for participation as well as your attendance. Thank you. Thank you all, and for the Q&A.
Thank you all. Bye-bye. Bye for now. Have a safe holiday.
Bye.
Bye.